This is the podcast where we go deeper than the data to talk about leadership, innovation, and what it really takes to move healthcare forward. I'm your host, Stephanie Dorwart, the CEO of Altius Healthcare Consulting Group. And today we're diving deep into a topic that's at the heart of every high-performing hospital: leadership that transforms patient care. My guest today embodies that idea. She's a nurse, she's a teacher, she has years of experience, she's a researcher, she's an educator, and now she's working with two colleagues on new leadership and transforming how we think about leadership in healthcare. I first met Dr. Kennedy at Grady Health System, where she was known for operational excellence and for leading with humanity. And today I have the pleasure of welcoming her to the stage so we can talk about everything that she's working on now about building a culture of trust and everything focused on leadership. Kay, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I am thrilled to get to reconnect with you since those days several years ago when we were at Grady discussing productivity. So it's so nice to be able to get back together with you today. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely, Kay. I'm thrilled to have you here today on Beyond the Benchmarks, and I can't wait to share your story and everything that you're working on with the audience and healthcare leaders at large. Now, you've worn many different hats throughout your career, and can you start by maybe sharing a little bit about your background with the audience so they have a little bit more understanding of where you've come from?
Oh, yes. I've been a nurse for about 40 years, and my passion is leadership. And I have held different leadership positions from the bedside to the CNO position. I have also kept a foot in academia. I have taught at Emory in the DMP program there and have adjunct appointments at both Case Western and MGH, Institute of Health Professions. One of the things that kind of catapulted my career was my DMP program, which was at Massachusetts MGH, Institute of Health Professions. And that program was so rich because the group of leaders that were going through the program were all in vice president positions or higher. And it just was so enriching to me personally and professionally. But then from there, I got together with two colleagues and we started on a different journey, a journey to try to understand how we could lead differently in healthcare. And it sort of took on a life of its own.
I encourage everyone to go out and look at this. Human-centered leadership is the focus of the book, and it's really what you and your colleagues have spent a lot of time on, and the why behind that leadership. Kay, can you define for the audience, what is human-centered leadership, and how did it evolve, and what led you to write the book and begin on the mission?
Well, back in 2019, I brought together two dear colleagues that I knew had the same philosophy of leadership that I did. We would have all called ourselves servant leaders at the time. And what it meant for all of us is that we were pouring ourselves into the roles, the people that we were working with in our organizations. And we really were not taking care of ourselves at all. We were ignoring ourselves in the process, and we were really bumping up against burnout. I didn't say that at the time, but looking back, I really do think that was the case for me personally, and also for my two colleagues. One of my colleagues, Lucy LeClaire, is an excellent qualitative researcher. And she said, we need to look into this further and even do a research study to learn more about what makes a successful leader, specifically in healthcare. because when we went to the literature, we saw a gap there. We saw a lot of leadership styles that people aspire to, primarily in healthcare, transformational leadership. We didn't feel that that was completing what we needed as leaders, because our fulfillment comes through relationships and getting results through relationships. So we did a qualitative study. It was IRB approved. It was using a methodology called constructivist grounded theory, which means we were constructing something using the voice of nursing to help and inform that construction. We asked the people that we talked with, who were leaders from the bedside to the CNO position, we asked them really one question that informed this the development of this theory. And that question was to describe the leader you've had in your career that you would follow to the ends of the earth. The thing that impressed me most about this is no matter what position those nurses were in, the answer, that nurse leader that they would follow, was the same. They were describing the same leader. And that's when we realized that this was a common thread among leaders, this identity of a leader that created an environment where we could be our best, where we felt so good about what we were doing and fulfilled in our role. We did ask them one other question, Stephanie, but it it was kind of a heartbreaking question. We asked them to tell us about a leader that had made them want to leave a position or an organization or even the profession. And when we asked that question, so many feelings in the room. People actually started to cry as they described this leader to us. It was, in fact, the exact opposite of the leader that we all knew that we wanted in our core. So that's how it started with this research study. And fortunately, the idea of constructivist grounded theory, you can bring in the experience of the researchers to inform, and the science of caring that Gene Watson has developed. And also, there's an impact of another scientist, Donna Bedian, who says that theories, when they have this structure of structure, process, and outcomes, it's sort of a complete picture. And we used that influence as well. So that's where it came from. After we connected all these dots and got a visual interpretation of it, we recognized the focus on humans, and that just really led us towards naming it human centered leadership in healthcare, because we want to be specific that it is really designed for healthcare teams and leaders.
I love questions that you asked that got you started. What are the qualities of the leaders that you would follow? And what are the qualities of the leaders that made you want to leave the profession? And I love that you dove into both of those, because as we both know, and everyone's aware listening to this, is turnover in healthcare in many different areas and different places is an all-time high. In a lot of different, areas, we have situations with retention, and creating a culture of excellence that we hear often is really founded in leadership. You cannot create a culture of excellence without creating a culture of leaders that individuals want to follow.
That's exactly right, Stephanie. We developed an implementation program for human-centered leadership in healthcare, and it is pertinent to whatever role you play in or you hold in the organization. But I love it when we have the opportunity to work with leaders close to the bedside because I feel like it just enlightens them to this influence that they have that they didn't really recognize or act on before. We all know that manager role is so vital in the organization, but sometimes the nurses in that role are just really having a difficult time because they're sort of in between. They see what's needed on the unit, but they're feeling a lot of pressure from the top. And sometimes they're caught in a situation where they're micromanaging or they're checking list or they're feeling like they just can't get the work done. And that is not fulfilling for our leaders. And we weren't happy knowing that that was happening in healthcare and would have an impact on the future of nurses who could be great leaders.
The impact that individual frontline leaders can have on the quality outcomes and the patient outcomes, as well as their team members, is profound. And unfortunately, in our industry, we do a great job at recognize strong clinical nurses that could develop into leaders. Then we basically promote them into the role, and we do not provide them with the skills, the leadership development, the training, the mentorship, and everything necessary to pull them into becoming the best leader that they can possibly be. And I believe that's really what you were, sharing, is that there are all these great leaders out there, but we don't necessarily allow them to evolve into leadership because they're getting bogged down with the mundane tasks and even not really understanding what their role is.
I think you hit that nail on the head. Um, when we are working with leaders, we start with really exploring with them their personal why they are a nurse, and then why they are a nurse leader. And there is a decent amount of work that needs to be done as an individual to recognize the priority that needs to be placed on just prioritizing yourself. We talk about the need to take care of yourself. We talk about well being and how important it is to know what well being is for you so that you can pursue it. We talk about self awareness and the importance of both internal and external self awareness. External meaning how people are seeing you, internal, how you're seeing you. Self compassion, treating yourself like you would your best friend instead of beating yourself up when you make an error, a mistake. And we also talk about mindfulness and the power of being in the moment, how important that is as a leader to be able to build relationships and make good decisions. So many of us, at least I remember myself as a new leader, I walked around with a list in my head, constantly running of every little thing I needed to do, and every big thing as well. And it definitely does bog you down. And all of these different concepts that I've mentioned about prioritizing yourself, we fit those together in what we call the dimension of self. And the tagline for human centered leadership in healthcare is it starts with you, but it's not about you. So it's not about you fixing everything, your ego, your wonderful ideas. It's about leading through relationships. It's about developing the team so that you can have this culture of excellence. And we call that dimension the awakener, the one who sees potential in people. And then another dimension is the connector, and that's the part of a leader that build strong teams, that recognizes they don't have to have all the answers because they have a team that they trust. And that leads to a culture of trust, the attributes that go with that dimension. And then the last dimension is the upholder. And that dimension really builds off the idea of we work in relation to others. The relationship we have with our team members is really important, and we recognize the whole person. So we break it down into these dimensions so that people can get a really good understanding of the behaviors that go with each. But in real life, leaders are leading in this approach that just prioritizes relationships and getting results through relationships.
I think one of the things I'd love to highlight about all of that is that leadership's really multidimensional.
Oh,
And there
yes.
are so many different layers of who you become as a leader, but understanding all of those different dimensions of who you become in different situations is important. And I really want to draw out the mindfulness aspect of it because, healthcare, we're dealing with very heavy. Talk about what it means to be mindful as a healthcare leader.
Well, I think it is developing a practice of bringing your mind to the present, because since our mind is typically running around in a lot of different directions, it's not necessarily something that we do that often. There was a study that I know of that was done at Harvard that actually looked at how much of the time people are focused on what they're doing. And it's like about 50% of the time you're really focused on what you're doing. And the rest of the time you're doing something, but you're thinking about something else. And you can just imagine how ineffective you are in your role as a leader in healthcare when your mind is not focused. So, one thing that we suggest that people do is to have mindful pauses and maybe pick something that you do a lot of. In healthcare, we wash our hands a lot. So, if you were washing your hands, to call your attention to what you're doing, to start to create these pathways in our brain that really bring us to the present. Sometimes you can come up with sort of a ritual that you do to clear your mind of what you were just experiencing and walking into the next meeting in a more mindful way. So there's different ideas that work for different people, but the idea behind mindfulness is coming up with a practice to make a habit of bringing your mind to the present. And when we first started sharing this theory, it really did feel like a theory because it was the way that we were connecting all the dots and a framework to practice by. But now it just feels like real life because it's so practical, and because we have validated that these behaviors do result in a culture that gives you outcomes. So we have seen outcomes related to engagement, retention, and also patient experience, because that was the one that I was so amazed by, is because it was not a direct impact on staff that you were leading. It was the impact of the staff you were leading on the patients they were taking care of. And that really just, I think, solidifies how important it is to have an environment where the staff feel cared for and the staff know that the organization is behind them in prioritizing well being.
I definitely agree with that, Kay. And I think, recently we've all seen some of the shifts in regulations and requirements. And recently the Joint Commission just made some changes to how they're going to manage, leadership and, ratios moving forward. What impact do you believe, Joint Commission shift is going to have on the work that you do? And more importantly, on the clients that we're both serving?
Well, I'll tell you what I really hope happens. And what I really hope happens is that those nurses who are close to patient care, I hope that they become engaged and empowered to design the model that will serve the patients the best. They know the differences in the patients that are seen on one area versus another. They know the workload that goes with that. They know who can perform that work. Um, they need to be figuring out, designing that model that's going to work and work within whatever budget constraints an organization has. But it is the most important business of the hospital, what's happening. So it's an area that has to be resourced in both financially and with the correct workforce.
Yeah,
So I really hope nurses take this.
I see it as such a powerful call to action,
Mhm.
not only to make sure that, nursing leadership has a seat at the table in all of the decisions related to budget, but to truly link productivity, staffing grids, nurse to patient ratios, hours per patient care all together,
Yeah.
and to translate it into information that the nurse leaders understand. All too often we find that leaders don't truly understand how to make those connections. And in those cases, they wouldn't be able to actually quantify, are they meeting the new Joint Commission requirements or not, because they don't understand what that truly means. And so I truly hope that it's a powerful call to action to break it down and to translate it into actionable strategies that nurse leaders can understand and deploy.
Well, absolutely. I think one of the biggest skills that nurse leaders have been taught is how to defend their productivity. We need nurse leaders to know how to build that productivity, how to say, this is what we need to deliver care to this group of patients, and figure out the most efficient and effective way to do that. It's not, these aren't difficult concepts at all. It's just, I think this is one of the areas we need to develop leaders in so that they have that informed voice and the confidence to speak out and to share their voice and their expertise when it comes to productivity and the workforce and the model of care that's used to deliver the care to the patients.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I'd like to just share the mic drop moment that, leaders should not be defending their productivity and that
Exactly.
that they
That's
should
what
be,
we teach them to do. It's
yes,
wrong.
it is what we teach them to do wrong. We want them to understand how to build the appropriately staff and grid so that they can model their productivity. But that's so important.
It really is. And Stephanie, I'm curious in your work, when you're working with an organization to look at efficiency, how often are you speaking with nurse leaders?
We are speaking with nurse leaders all the time. And, one of the things that we really do with the leaders is focus on what we call the anatomy of a target and helping the leaders understand how their nurse to patient ratios translate into hours per patient day so that they can build it from the ground up. For example, if on a med surg unit with higher acuity, that you can't operate at a 1 to 6, you need the 1 to 5, then
Mhm.
you understand that in 24 hours per day, you take the 24 divided by 5, and you know how many hours of RNs you need per day. And we do that across the board because then they understand their hour per patient day at that granular level, and they don't have to defend their productivity. They
Yeah,
understand their productivity,
yeah.
and that influences what their budget should be.
That's exactly right. I love that. It's just it's a requirement for empowerment, and for owning your profession, owning the practice of taking care of patients and leading that process as well. It's a requirement. That is with human centered leadership, it's all about um, recognizing the expertise that is at the bedside and not thinking that the leader has all the answers. So here's a perfect opportunity for us to see that in action.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And one of the things that I think resonated with me so far in this conversation is your focus on the growth of the leader and the focus that you meet them where they are is what I heard, and then evolve them into becoming the best leader that they possibly can be. And that's, I think, one of the strengths of the human centered leadership approach.
Exactly. And those leaders are in turn growing their team members the exact same way. And so creating a culture where people are striving to be their best and they know that they're trusted, they know somebody believes in them and is there to help them to navigate their way through their position and their career. And then to know that they're seen as an individual, a unique person who's bringing something special to the table. So, and I also think it's so important that that leader is um, modeling to the team. It's important to take care of yourself. Um,
You cannot lead
exactly.
anyone else unless you're taking care of yourself first. So I think it's so important to make sure that you're emphasizing that. And I love the way that you do that within human centered leadership.
Yeah, I think, we if we at least this is the way it clicked in my mind, is when I was working so many hours trying to be the best I could be as a CNO, what happens is you're not really designed as a human being to work all the time and to give everything at that job. And what was happening is I wasn't getting enough sleep, and my emotional regulation. Somebody might say something, and I might react in a way that is not showing my best as a leader. I could either become emotional, or I could be, you know, too much. I could react more than respond. So that emotional regulation, which we know is a part of emotional intelligence, it comes from taking care of yourself and recognizing emotions in yourself so that you can build in that little pause to respond in the way that you want to respond.
Yeah, I think that's an important message for all of us to make sure that we're balancing, all the different priorities that we have. And I think we just have permission from Kay to take that pause when we need to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's Jonathan Fisher, who's an expert in communication. I took from him, he said, let the first words out of your mouth be your breath. And I think that is so wise to just take a minute to pause and able to be in control of your emotions.
Take a breath and
Take a
just
breath.
breathe and pause.
Yeah.
So, Kay, I know that you've done so many things over the last few years, especially since you started. But what's really next for you leadership, where do you see things going in the future?
Well, Stephanie, we are thrilled that we've been able so far to kind of go across the country from the East Coast to the West Coast. And right now, we even are working with the team in Australia. And so it's really gaining traction throughout the country and internationally. But we're a small team, three strong women with the support of some other team members who are also amazing and fantastic leaders. But we wanted to be able to have even a stronger impact. So we started looking for a partner and we found the perfect one. We found the perfect one with a company called Healthcare Plus Solutions Group. This is a healthcare consulting organization that was co-founded just in, I think it was 2022, by Quint Studer and Dan Collard. And we have been acquired by HPSG, Healthcare Plus Solutions Group. So I feel like we're a solution among this group, and it's going to allow us to have a bigger impact, to have more resources to work with, to bring this to more organizations, to more individual nurse leaders, and even outside of nursing to other healthcare leaders, and to the staff that are taking care of our patients, which is the center of what we're all here for. So we're excited. It's like, one of those dreams come true. And just really couldn't be happier than to connect with two incredible leaders, and both Dan and Quint, and then the team that they have built. So together, I feel like there's great things ahead. Absolutely.
Very exciting, and congratulations. And
Thank
I
you.
can only imagine how excited you and the team are to be able to impact more organizations and more leaders and just have more reach and be able to,
That's it.
take this more. So, is there anything else that you feel you'd really like to care and convey with the audience about leadership today? Healthcare is in, I think, a very interesting space right now. As we look forward, I don't know that any of us can predict where things are moving. But what advice would you give to a new leader or even an experienced leader that's listening to this about what they should focus on right now?
Well, I do feel like starting with self is critical. Um, and it's not been a part of other leadership styles we've traditionally embraced, certainly not in healthcare, and not even outside of healthcare, really. Servant leadership, transformational, authentic. The focus is more on how you lead rather than the leading yourself. So I think that has to be a top priority because it impacts your ability to be an effective leader. And then I think just recognizing that leadership is about influence, and to influence, you have relationships. So leadership is about leading through relationships. And that is where the outcomes come from. It's through relationships, it's not through a new initiative, it's through developing people, trusting them, believing in them, and recognizing that we're all human.
I think that's an extremely important, qualification, classification, is that leadership comes through relationships.
Mhm.
And, as we talked about earlier, Altius focuses on workforce efficiency and
Yes.
productivity. And, transformation and change doesn't come from numbers. It comes from people, and people become influenced by leadership. So developing strong productivity comes from developing strong leaders.
We are singing the same song, Stephanie. I I think this is something that we probably knew a long time ago when we first connected, that we had this um, interest in being people focused way back before human centered leadership was constructed.
Absolutely. Okay, this has been such an inspiring conversation. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
I have
For,
too.
for our listeners who want to learn more about human-centered leadership or you leadership, or even your new venture with the Healthcare Solutions Group, you know, where should they go to contact you and find you?
Well, we have a website. It's You Leadership. We named our group You Leadership because of that tagline, because of it starting with you. So it's the letter U, the word leadership.com. And you can also contact me directly at KAY at youleadership.com. Our book is available wherever you buy your books, and we have a new book coming out later this year that's being published by ANA, and the title is Human Centered Leadership in Healthcare: The Revolution Continues. And in this book, I am so excited because we have invited the clients who have partnered with us to share their stories of how embracing human centered leadership led to outcomes. So we have a lot of contributing editors in the book, not editors, contributing authors in the book. And so I think that's what makes it so exciting for us.
I'm already looking forward to the, second edition, hearing the client stories and seeing how it's been, enacted at the front lines in different healthcare organizations will be so important. And I can't wait to read it.
Thanks, Stephanie. I've enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for enjoying being on the podcast and for the partnership that we've had over the years. It's been amazing to, be influenced by the work that you've done. And for everyone at Beyond the Benchmarks, we believe that leadership is the heartbeat of performance. And when leaders grow, hospitals thrive. And the work that Dr. Kennedy described today and that we champion at Altius Healthcare Consulting Group, where you blend quantitative performance improvement with the qualitative leadership excellence, is what's going to develop your culture of excellence. Productivity is not just about the numbers. It's about the people. It's about culture. It's about leaders who walk with purpose and lead with heart. And today's conversation with Kay is going to position you to do that. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like everything, subscribe, make sure you go out to You Leadership. And remember, this is where we help organizations move beyond the benchmarks to sustainable success. I'm Stephanie Dorwart, the host of Beyond the Benchmarks. And until next time, let's keep leading with clarity, courage, and compassion.